welcome to our very first Heller School Alumni Career Chat. This is a new series that we're starting in the wake of COVID. While we're all physically distanced, we want to stay connected to students, we want to stay connected to alumni, and continue talking about the ways that we advance in our career. And we are very fortunate to have with us today Sarah Emond, who is an MPP alum from 2009. So we'll be talking a little bit about a recession job search, and who also serves on the Alumni Board of Advisors. So welcome, Sarah. And thank you for being our guinea pig in our beta test of these conversations. I promise to cut out anything that makes us look incredibly silly.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to be here today.
Of course. So jumping right in, you are working from home.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about, what your role is and how it's kind of shifted and how the organization's priorities have shifted in the wake of COVID?
Certainly. So I feel really fortunate that I work at an organization where we can still do our job remotely, and sort of want to acknowledge all of the roles and all of the positions that don't have that luxury. And so we are feeling very fortunate to be able to continue to serve our mission and do our work. The work at ICER, the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review, is really grounded in social justice. It's about making sure that all patients have access to the care they need at a cost that we can all afford. So if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's taught us that when we have sometimes misaligned priorities for how we use our limited resources in the healthcare system, we can be unprepared for something like a global pandemic. Now, no one thinks that you should have a stockpile of ventilators for the off chance you're going to have a global pandemic where you need ventilators that year. But what a lot of people had been signaling was, we're going to have one of these, and there's certain things that we could have done. And when you have the convoluted healthcare system that we have, where there's competing priorities, there's not one person in charge of making decisions about how healthcare resources are allocated, you end up with where we were, which was no real leadership on how to distribute and allocate resources. The fact that we still overpay for low value services means we don't have the money available to do things like get PPE to everybody who needs it. So in our work, we have been really focused on developing models to help inform the conversation about fair pricing for any potential COVID treatment or vaccine. And so we have some work that we've done to signal what a fair price could be for remdesivir, which is one of the first drugs to get an emergency use authorization, a drug from Gilead. And we continue to work with stakeholders on how we can update that model and continue to inform the policy conversation around pricing. Otherwise, work at ICER sort of continues as it was going, still doing reports on various different disease areas, hemophilia, a type of liver disease called NASH. So we've got a lot on our plate and a lot that we can be working on, again, serving our broader mission about having enough healthcare resources to serve all patients.
Great. And working from home has been, I assume, somewhat challenging.
It has. And so, it has and it hasn't, right? So it would be in a leadership position in a small organization. I don't think I was really prepared for, there's a fair amount of emotional management that's happening when you can't see your team in person every day. So we're a team that valued in-person collaboration. Everyone came to the office most days. And all of a sudden, it took more work and more effort to know how to stay connected, how to make sure that we were serving their needs as they made the transition from home. Got a pretty diverse workforce, different numbers of years out of school, which means different living environments. And so as someone who's been out of school for a while and lives in the suburbs, I had the fortune of having enough space to have a desk and be able to work from home. Half my team is working from their kitchen table. A whole bunch of my team have roommates. And so making sure that we had systems in place to give them the resources and the structure that they needed to be able to do that took some work, but my team has been unbelievably resilient. I've just been so impressed with how they've all come together and they've risen to this challenge, supporting each other, quarantine cocktails, coffee chats, ways that we're still trying to keep the connection that we all value. And it's one of the reasons we really love working together in these unbelievably uncertain times.
I think that's so true. That's something that really resonates, I think, for Heller staff as well, right? We're so used to just walking down to each other's offices, and a big part of why it's fun to go to work every day, if you're someone who's used to going somewhere, is that you have these really small in-person interactions that end up being incredibly meaningful. Right? You don't even realize, like, oh, you know, being able to say hi to Mary, or, you know, walk down to Norma's office and just chat for a minute, how important that interaction actually is in your day-to-day life. And I think, you know, it's so funny that you say cocktail hour. The dean has been doing that. So we pile onto a Zoom call and we try and replicate it, and it's fun in its own way, but it's not quite the same. And so I think, you know, there's this desire to kind of get back, even though we know it's not time yet.
It's not
right.
time yet.
And it can feel really draining, right? You talked about doing emotional management with your team. I know it kind of speaks to how important it is to build resiliency within your organization. So I'm wondering if maybe we can talk a little bit about that, right? I love resiliency, you love resiliency. And I think working in a nonprofit, particularly doing social justice work that's incredibly right now, is probably even more draining. So how has that played out a little bit?
So we have the good fortune of having a team that it's just in their DNA, the resiliency that they show, both for their own life challenges, but also for the work that we do. I was probably pretty naive about how intense social justice work could be. And so I started my career, I worked in clinical research at a hospital, then was on the for-profit side in biopharmaceutical companies for a number of years, different set of challenges before I went to Heller and got my degree. And my first job after Heller was ICER, where I've been for 11 years. And as ICER's prominence has increased, and our work really does focus on highlighting when prices chosen by people in the healthcare field, whether it's a manufacturer or a hospital system or a medical device company, don't align with the clinical benefits for patients, as it's gotten more attention, we're challenging the status quo. There have been unfettered avenues for unlimited pricing in a lot of sectors of healthcare for a very long time because of our patent system and our government granted monopolies, and we challenge that status quo. And so that makes some people upset because you're going against the way things that have always been done. And the team at ICER has really developed, not just a thick skin about the things that are said about people questioning our motives or our mission or why we do it as a way to spread fear about having a rational conversation about fair prices, but also it builds us stronger as an organization because that resiliency, in order to stay focused on the mission, was so critically important to how people found success and joy and worth in their work, that the team we have now is just pretty incredible in terms of how they face those challenges. Staying rooted in the mission has been incredibly important through the difficult times. And it's just something I don't think I was prepared for until I lived it, exactly how hard it can be to change the status quo. And I had a very trusted advisor on our board in the early days when it was really hard say to me, Sarah, they wouldn't be doing this if you weren't actually making a difference. And I think there's so many of us doing social justice work, whether it's the nasty comment on Twitter or the person who writes the op-ed full of lies. It can feel really demoralizing, but then you have to remember, they wouldn't be doing that if you weren't actually making a difference. And that's what motivates us.
I think that's good. Is like, if you're not making some people angry, you're probably not doing it right. How do you think think about that with your staff when you're hiring someone or when you're going through a particularly hard kind of moment? How do you gauge other people's resiliency, and how as a leader are you helping them build it, right? I think it's one thing to say, oh, I know I'm doing it right because people are mad, but also like, I don't want people to be mad
at me. Yeah. So how do you balance both of those things?
Yeah.
We use radical honesty and transparency in our hiring. So it's, we don't pretend that it's not a thing. It's also, you can just Google it and you can see it. And so people usually walk into an interview going, can you explain to me, like, what am I reading? And we can sort of unpack that. I think that we've done a couple of things through interviewing to try to make sure that people understand the culture and the expectations of being an ICER employee. And I don't want to say I try to scare people away on an interview, because when you're recruiting, you're trying to get them to join your group. I totally understand that. But again, through radical transparency and honesty, I'm also signaling like this isn't your typical nonprofit, that's, under the radar, a couple of people like this is different. And so we emphasize that it's high profile. We also emphasize that it's a group where no one who's ever said the words "that's not my job" has ever lasted, right? So like that is just not a key value or core value. The other thing we say, and we ask almost every candidate that comes in, and we say, what does kindness look like to you in a workplace? And we learn a lot from that answer, because we tell them that kindness is a core value, and that pervades all of the choices that we make, from our mission to how we do hiring to how we do support and growth. And you can learn a lot from the answer. And we've learned to listen to those answers to know if they have the sort of right cultural fit. Once people are on board, there's just a lot of mentoring. So it's a lot of making sure people aren't thrown to the wolves, that they've got the support they need, whether it's through messaging or training or understanding the historical context of a particular issue, to be able to go into difficult conversations with stakeholders, or handle a tough question from a reporter, or be able to explain what we do at the Thanksgiving dinner table, which is also a challenge at times.
Yeah.
That's part of the training as well. But it really does come down, I do think, from actions being able to dictate how, or not dictate's the wrong word, but actions helping the team know sort of the path forward in difficult situations. And so I feel really fortunate that the senior management team sort of generally models really good behavior like this. So that can be everything from saying, I'm having a really tough day. Like today was really hard because I had a difficult conversation with a stakeholder who was upset with what we were doing, and I was having trouble connecting with them. They weren't believing us. And so I'm having a tough day. And I've noted that even when I just say that to my team, it gives them permission to say, Sarah, I'm having a tough day. I'm like, got it. Why don't you go take a walk, or take the rest of the day off, or like whatever that might be. And the other thing leadership does is, and I'm really proud of this, is just say like when we've screwed up. And I think that actually builds a culture of resiliency, because resiliency doesn't mean that you're right all of the time and you never make a mistake. It means that you bounce back from your mistake in a reasonable amount of time and with a reasonable amount of support. And so I have definitely owned it in front of the team. So I'll give a quick example. We're doing weekly Zoom calls now with the whole team. We used to have monthly staff meetings because, again, we saw each other in the hallways. It wasn't that hard. But we're doing it every Monday. And one of our early ones, I was going through my mind of like all the things that we were working on based on COVID. And I said, and, we're looking at the budget again. And like, I'm going to be doing that with the board. And I got feedback afterwards that some of the junior staff started to panic, because the COO saying, I'm going to take a look at the budget in the beginning of an economic downturn, they heard, I'm going to lay people off.
Yeah.
And I went back on the next call, guys, I screwed up. I was like, so everyone's job is secure. I should have led with that. I was going through my to-do list of the things that I need to do, because of course we need to adjust the budget, because we might not hire as many people this year as we thought. We're not sure yet how recruitment's going to be impacted by COVID. And so like I went through all of these things. And so it's a silly example, but it's the kind of thing that I think that the management team's done a really nice job of like modeling, like when we screw up and then you rebound and you fix it. And that's like one of the ways you build resilience.
I love that. And I think also, you know, if you're willing to admit to really small mistakes and that's just part of your culture, it makes it easier for other people to admit, you know, potentially larger mistakes and work through them rather than, you know, creating a big tangle of other mess that you have to eventually, because everything eventually kind of gets dealt with and it's easier to do it if, you know, if you're upfront. So I heard one that you might still be hiring, but I heard, you know, you've been at ICER for 11 years.
We have,
right? Is that congratulations?
Thank you.
Is that normal? Right? Are you an example? I mean, is this people stay there because of the work or?
I'm really proud of our turnover and our longevity. I am the second longest serving after the founder, and so I do proudly wear that badge. But I have a number of staff who are in the 4, 5, 6 year range. Now, for several years, when I started in 2009, there were just 3 or 4 of us, and so we didn't actually start growing significantly until 2013. We were about 6, and then by like 2015 we were about 17. So in the last 5 years, you know, that's when we started to really ramp up and add people. I do have several people who've been there for several years, and I'd like to think it's because of the culture and the work and all those things. But we try to find roles for outstanding employees. And so as an example, I had someone come across my desk. She was completely overqualified for the job. And I knew I wanted her to be on the team, and I knew I had a role for her, but I didn't have it yet. And I was honest with her in the interview. I said, you can do this job. Like, I can hire you for this position, and I want to hire you for this position. You'll learn the ropes and you'll learn everything. And then as soon as I can, I'm going to promote you. I was like, I'm just asking you to trust me. I know you don't have any reason to, but this is one of the ways that we build an organization around exceptional people. And I'm really glad she said yes. And within 9 months, I was able to promote her as my deputy. And it's been fantastic. And it's exactly what ICER needed. And it's exactly what we need, but I didn't need it at the moment she came across my desk. And I can't say I can do that every single time for every single role. I am proud of our low turnover. I'm proud of the people who are committed to the mission and want to stay, and have had opportunities to grow into other positions at the organization.
I love that. I think it's really rare. You know, everyone talks about employee retention and what it looks like to keep amazing people, but it's not as often that you actually see it in action. So I think that's wonderful.
You know, and if I could quickly add to that, Erica, sorry, the other part of it though is, and this isn't as popular, and you don't necessarily hear this in these types of conversations. It's also really important to say goodbye to an employee when they're not the right fit. And if this is an audience of people like looking for work, and you've ever gone through a layoff or have had a position terminate, I think that's not a reflection on the person necessarily. It's a reflection on the match between the skills and the role. And I've been laid off, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and it actually sort of put me on the path to get to grad school and to ICER, and I couldn't be happier that happened. And so I don't want to pretend that we get it right every single time and that every hire is a perfect match. And so I think I would just offer the advice that if you ever go through a situation where it's not the right fit and you are let go, try not to take that too personally, and know that there is a position that does match your skill set where you'll be happier, and that no one's happy when somebody's in a role that they're not ready to do. Yeah. And that's nobody's happy. The employer's not happy, the employee's not happy. And so that's an extra piece of advice there.
No, I think that's great. And I think it fits also with that sort of broader theme of resiliency, right? It's so easy to tie your identity into whether or not you're successful in a role, whether or not you like it, right? You know, I think, you know, I've not been laid off, but I've been in roles that it was not a good fit. And the sooner I got out, the happier everyone was, because no one was performing their best.
Nope.
So I hear you on that for sure.
Yep.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about recession job searching. So I graduated from college, from undergrad in 2007. and then went to grad school in 2009, as fast as I possibly could to wait this whole thing out. But I kind of lucked into my job in 2007, and I saw so many of my friends, on the job market, really smart people, really qualified, super passionate, taking months and months to find a job. When I am talking to students now, we're having those conversations. So tell me a little bit, if you can remember, it's been 11 years. What was it like to get onto the job market in 2009?
So my concentration is health policy. That's where my expertise is. And 2009 was a really interesting time because, yes, we're in the middle of a recession, but we were also negotiating the Affordable Care Act. And I thought I was going to graduate and I was going to move to DC and work on implementation of the ACA. Because everyone was like, it's going to pass this year, it's going to pass this year. And for those of us who watched it closely, it took an extra year. It took a while, right? So here I am. It's May of 2009. I'm graduating. It's a recession. The one thing that I have thought I've wanted to do with my degree isn't a thing yet because it hasn't passed Congress and none of us at the time knew if it ever was going to. And then I started to go, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I was like, gosh, am I going back into industry? Because that's where I have expertise and contacts. And should I do that? No, but I went to grad school because I was passionate about health policy. How can I find this? Now, I feel like I got lucky by taking an informational interview that got rescheduled twice with someone who was really, I knew from the industry side, and again, wasn't really excited to go back to industry, but decided you say yes to every single informational interview that presents itself to you. And I did, and I sat down. She said, my friend Steve Pearson's hiring for a founding executive director for his institute. Can I send him your resume? And I was like, of course you can send him my resume. And that's how I got introduced to Steve, and the rest is history, as they say. But what I found myself doing was saying, okay, what do I know I'm good at? And some of that was drawing on my career before grad school. I had a skill set that I could draw on. I was like, you know what? It's okay if I take a job that maybe I feel I'm underqualified for, but I know I'll be good at because I have the skill set and maybe the organization is a really good match. And that's going to be okay because this isn't your typical job market. And so I had to give myself permission to not necessarily take a big step forward with what was next. And so I was looking at positions that were back in corporate communications, which is what I had done before I went to school. And so I was evaluating those options and was very fortunate that I had this other path that presented itself. But I was fully ready to go do what I had done before because that was going to be okay in a recession. Because again, I knew I would be good at it because I had the skill set. And if I was working with people I really liked and an organization that I really cared about, those things were going to be enough. And I trusted that the opportunity was going to present itself to take that next step. So all it meant to me in my head was, okay, your plan was to get to a 10 after graduate school, maybe not on a 10 scale, maybe we're on a 20 scale, right? So like you were at a 5 before graduate school, you want to be at a 10 when you're done. And then I was like, you know what, maybe I'll take a 7 because it's the middle of a recession. So you just have to manage your expectations a bit and then own that it's okay to go and sort of knock it out of the park. It's something that you know that you'll be good at because you have that skill set already.
Absolutely. I imagine that even just giving yourself permission to kind of take something a little bit off the path probably opened you up a little bit psychologically to just kind of take the pressure off.
100%, because I think there can be a lot of pressure coming out of graduate school that you've made this huge investment of time, of money, of giving up wages for those years when you were on a path of So we've done it. And so when you're done, you're like, but if I don't get X job, none of that would have been worth it. And I had to give myself permission that if I didn't get X job, it was still going to be worth it because life is long. I was still still feel early in my career. I guess I'm mid-career officially. I don't feel my age at all. And so you have to give yourself permission to, it helped a lot psychologically to have that option.
I think that's great. I know we're running on the end of time. So I like this resiliency theme that we're on. Right. So as we're thinking about, giving advice to our new May grads, congratulations. May
Congratulations.
grads. We still have some February grads who are looking for roles. We have alumni who have been in a position, where their job is no longer theirs. How would you advise someone? What resiliency advice, I think, is what I think I want to keep going on resiliency. So what should students be thinking about? What should alumni be thinking about?
I think they want to, if we're tying resiliency to job search, there's the easy stuff, which is keep trying, because eventually there's going to be a match, and it can be very discouraging if you get a lot of no answers at all or a lot of no's, but you have to keep trying. Look for the opportunity that the pause in active work presents to do a couple of things. So one is this sounds, I'm sure you say this all the time, and I don't mean to sound trite, but your cover letter should be kick-ass, right? There's no excuse that your cover letter isn't personalized to the employer, talks about connecting to the mission or the goals of the organization and how your skill set can help that employer. So give yourself permission to go work on your cover letter, like while you're part of doing that. But the other thing is there's a lot of opportunities to be volunteering and contributing, not through paid work, if you're in a job search. And I think a lot of employers value that people had opportunities. Now, I know COVID has presented a different set of challenges to sort of like physically going and volunteering. And so that's completely understood. But phone banking and, helping deliver meals for, people who are homebound. I mean, these are silly examples, but there are still things that you can do that demonstrate to an employer that you didn't let the blip in whatever happened sort of bring you down. You looked for opportunities to build skill sets or contribute back. So I think there's a lot of examples of how resiliency through the job search can continue to then translate into what you want to signal to a potential employer.
Great. Yeah, I think one of the ways I often frame this obviously depends on the background, but the sort of pro bono work that can still provide value to
Totally.
or whatever chosen industry you're in, right? Whether it's healthcare or business consulting or international development, right? If you can find a project to work on that can provide value, you're still in it, right? Absolutely.
Yep.
Good. Well, this has been great. I always enjoy talking to you.
Same.
I hope that whoever's watching this provides some value to whoever is watching this. And you've been a great guinea pig. I really appreciate it. I think I don't know that I'm gonna have to cut anything, so I feel good about that.
I hope I made it easy for you, but I really appreciated the opportunity to talk with you and to share this with the alums. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and be well. And we'll see you in person when we can.
And we can.
All
Thanks,
right.
Erica.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye.